think if people listen to what I'm saying and not freak out by the title or some of the things I go through here and hang with me, see what I'm getting at. So, diversity. Today I want to talk about diversity and why modern diversity is not, it's often not a good thing and not really something to seek. And typically, what I'm talking about modern diversity is diversity of the way people look. So it's, when people talk about diversity now, it's almost always racial or ethnic diversity. And so I'll talk about why I don't think that is really a good primary goal to seek. I think there are types of diversity that are good to find. I don't know if racial diversity is an important one, except for in certain situations, which I'll discuss a little bit. So let's kind of set the stage first. What we, oh, got some crazy hair going on. What we see a lot of now is people, I did something about a college student last week who was kind of ostracized for posting something, and they wanted to re-educate her and stuff. And what I think a lot of that is a lack of diversity, because we're not allowing a diversity of ideas or a diversity of thought, which in my opinion is much more important, and I'll support that argument. But we see more in college campuses and businesses as well. I've been a part of them when I've worked in the corporate world, doing things like diversity training. And diversity training is typically, it's all about talking about accepting other people that look different, which is good. I mean, that's something that we want to do, but to strive for organizing any type of system based on the way people look is ridiculous. And that's been something that's funny to me. I mean, I guess it would be funny if it didn't have such an impact, but funny in the fact that so many people that want inclusion and diversity and tend to speak out against things like racism, which is not a good thing. I don't think anybody wants racism. Well, most people don't want racism, and most people aren't racist. Yeah, I said it. Most people aren't racist. But your goal being not to be racist, and then organizing people strictly based on the color of their skin and the way they look and not the way they think, is pretty stupid. And it's pretty amazing to me that people that do that can't see it, how they're totally blind to their own bias. So let's think about it. We've got a couple different examples. Gosh, excuse me. I've had a little congestion the past couple days. Hopefully it's not COVID. Although I'm 30 and I'm in pretty good shape, I think I'll be okay. But anyway, so we have all these places that are, saying we need more racial diversity. Well, my question is, what does that get you? Because if we only look at people's appearance, the color of their skin, and say there will be a big difference in our business or a big difference in the atmosphere on our college campus if people look different. Not if people think different, that doesn't matter. And sometimes, to be totally honest, thinking different is discouraged. And in some places, outright banned or made impossible to do. You think of college campuses or businesses where people have differing ideas. Often now, political is what we think of, but when they have different ideas and they are canceled or they are kicked off campus, suspended from their sorority, like we talked about, demoted. They find a reason to fire people from jobs because they don't believe the way that they're supposed to believe. You think on social media, even big social media companies now and tech companies, we're seeing more and more come out where insiders are saying, I was ostracized because I didn't go by the party line. And then at that point, it doesn't matter what you look like. So I think all of it's pretty phony. I think a lot of the racial diversity stuff is virtue signaling. I think it's a lot of companies and schools and organizations that feel like they're appeasing a certain group of people. But the problem is you're appeasing people on how not racist you are by being blatantly racist, saying the only quality of people or the only thing that differentiates people is the way they look. So let's first look at a couple things. I want to first, so I can be accurate here. When we talk about diverse, like what's the actual definition of diverse? So diverse is differing from one another, unlike. That's it. Just being different. Composed of distinct or unlike elements or qualities. Okay. So, just to be diverse this is not strictly about race. This is just being different. Now, if we think that the only way to be different is to look different, so the only way that people can be different is to be of different race, then is that not saying that all people of one race are the same? And the only way to achieve differentiation or to achieve diversity is to have different races? So it seems to me that if you say all people of a certain race are the same, that makes everyone a monolith and really is the definition of racism, which, if we look at a belief that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits and capacities. Well, if we're saying the only way to get diversity is to get different races, then I think we're attributing the same, traits and capacities all to one race rather than individuals. I don't understand how this has been lost on people. I'm not sure where we went wrong, where we thought the way to not be racist is to be incredibly by the book definition racist. You only care about the way people look and not care about the way people think. It blows my mind. Now, I said there were times where I think racial diversity is important, and this is when it is. I think the only time racial diversity is important when we really need to, if there's a time we have to look at it and say, not even that we need more of it, but that it needs to be an option, is if we have a situation where a race is entirely excluded from something on purpose, like it used to be. If there's a sign outside a building that says like no blacks allowed, that's a problem. That's a problem because we need to have equal opportunity. I don't believe in equal outcome, but I do believe in equal opportunity. And to totally exclude a group based on race is just obviously as ignorant as only making decisions because of people's race, which is what racial diversity is. Only making decisions about how people are different based on what they look like. So yeah, if we don't have the option for racial diversity, then we have a problem. But that being a primary factor in what we seek, I think is silly. So here's another reason why. Let's think of a couple of examples that can kind of give you an illustration of this. So we'll do one real simple. Think about coming up. So at the time of this recording, it's the week before Halloween. So let's say you're going to have a Halloween party at your work, and the person in the office that organizes parties, your party planning committee, if they come up to you and they're like, hey, we're having a Halloween party, everybody's bringing something, Susan's bringing napkins and Bill's bringing cupcakes or whatever, we want you to bring candy, but we want you to bring an assortment of candy because it's Halloween and that's a thing. So you're like, yeah, okay, I can do that. And then, so whatever, the day of the party rolls around and you show up and you just have like a 10-pound bag of M&Ms and pop it down and you're like, there's the candy. And your party planning committee representative comes up and is like, what is this? You're like, oh, it's your candy. I was supposed to bring candy, so here it is. And they say, I've told you to bring like different types of candy, like a variety. essentially a diversity of candy. And you open it and you pour it in your bowl and you're like, it is. Look at all the different colors. I don't know all the colors of M&Ms, but there's like red and green and yellow and maybe blue. I want to say there's a brown one. Anyway, there was all these different colors of M&Ms, and you're like, that's diversity. And you're like, no, because on the inside they're the same. Like, it's the same candy. It's all chocolate. It just looks different on the outside. Okay, isn't that what we're doing right now? If everyone has the same thought process, but they look different on the outside, and you have a group that is now diverse, but they all have the same way of thinking, what's the point? How does that add to an environment? How does that add to a business atmosphere, a college campus, whatever, if people think the same, but all look different? Now, think about it this way. What would be better? What would be better if you came in to this party and, again, we'll go with the candy, but you came in with, let's think of some small, so you have all green M&Ms. You went to the M&M store and you only bought green. But you went to, I don't know if this is a thing, but you go to the Skittles store and you buy only green Skittles. And then, I don't think these even exist, but let's say there was green Reese's Pieces and you got only green Reese's Pieces. And now you put them in a different bowl. There's 3 different bowls. You've separated them out. And I don't think there'd be many people that would come in. They might look at that and go, that's kind of unusual. They're all green. But if you say, well, these are M&Ms, these are Skittles, these are Reese's Pieces, people can look at that and say, those are different. Those are different candies. They look the same, but quantitatively they are different because what they're made out of is not the same stuff. So why do we not do that when we talk about diversity? Why people that look the same? Because it's insane. Again, it's racist to look at a group of people that look the same and say, you all think the same. And that is what racial diversity is inherently based on. Saying that if you look a certain way, you think a certain way. So we have to have people that look different ways. That's crazy. But that's what we're doing. So yeah, keep your candy idea in mind. That's a simple way, at least for me, that's a simple way of illustrating the absurdity of, well, if you look the same, then you are the same. Stupid. Now, what about this? Let's think about it really with people and kind of illustrate that idea again. What if you go into a business and let's say we're in an accounting firm and we have a group of, I don't really know how accounting firms are exactly set up, but let's say we have a group of accountants, actuaries, whatever. And let's say there's 5 of them, but they're all Italian. And somebody comes in, let's say they're doing really well. And they come in, but they're like, hey, look, I understand that we're performing well. You're doing your job, but you all look the same. And so we need some diversity up in here. Well, why? And we see companies doing that all the time. So let's say we put in now a Korean with a liberal arts degree, or we put in a Hispanic with, an engineering degree. Like, you have people that look different now, but now you don't have the quality that you need, because the quality you needed was the accountant. It didn't matter what they looked like, even though they were the same race or from the same country. You were getting what you needed out of it. So to try to base a job on the fact that, well, people need to look different to do the job well doesn't make sense. Now, the same token, you can have people that look the same, like we've been saying with the candy. I've been telling you, just looking a certain way doesn't mean anything. Think about the fact that you can have 2 people that look the same and can be from totally different worlds, and that in itself is diversity. Because what we want is diversity of ideas. That's how you grow in a business. That's how you grow in an environment. That's how you grow your community, is you have different ideas coming in where people can kind of bounce their idea off of, weigh and measure their thoughts against something else. You have something to compare to. You have new ideas coming in. And if we try to get a group that's just totally homogenous, which is what we typically do when we go after racial diversity, we end up with a group of people we don't care what they think about. So we can easily have a homogenous group of thinkers that look different. We can have the M&Ms, the different colors, but they're the same on the inside, which is not neat. It doesn't add to growing any type of community. And I think that's how we end up with, it's like a really strong belief in certain companies or groups that see themselves as racially diverse, but they don't understand they don't have any diversity of thought. But because we've only put the importance on diversity of color, they think, oh, well, because we're racially diverse, we have diversity of thought, we're probably ahead of the game here. So it doesn't make sense. We've put the priority in the wrong place. And now that we've done that, we have some walking back to do, because it's too hard for people to understand, just because you look different doesn't mean you think different. For example, what if let's say three children grow up in a neighborhood that's low income? So you could say we go to maybe a government project neighborhood, so like government housing, and you have children of, I don't know, different races. So let's say you have a white kid, you got a black kid, and you have a Hispanic kid. Now they all look different, but let's say they grew up in the same community and they're friends. So they've all hung out and they've, played on the same parks. They've met the same people. They've gone through the same kind of struggles. They've had the same types of wins. And of course, every individual is different. Even growing up in the same community does not make you the same. We see that all the time. Some people get out of certain situations. Some people stay stuck in them. Some people regress. Just being in the same place even does not make you the same. But we'll take this kind of mentality. So we have three kids that look different, but they grew up in the same environment. And then let's take, three people that look, we'll say a black kid, white kid, and Hispanic kid that grew up in a wealthy neighborhood, or grow up in, going to a private school in an affluent area. Let's say all their parents are doctors, whatever. Do you think the Hispanic kid from the wealthy neighborhood at the private school has the same life experience as the Hispanic kid from the projects? Because that's what we're talking about with racial diversity, is if you look the same, you are the same. So what are we getting at? I don't understand why people can't really fathom that, like why we're only seeking racial diversity. But on the same time, so we're seeking this racial diversity, but at the same time, we're totally disregarding diversity of thought and diversity of ideas, to the point where we're actually shouting people down and keeping that from happening. That's not reasonable. We should be, as a civilization, as a culture at this point, we should know better than that, because we tried, and I don't know where the shift exactly was, but for a long time, we worked on getting past the race stuff and having the equal opportunity so we could get to a point where we could have diversity of thoughts. Because that was the important thing about racial inclusion, is because we were excluding an entire group of people that had different ideas. It wasn't because we were excluding a type of people that looked different. That's not what we needed. We didn't need just a different mix. Yes, you're very right. It's not because we needed a different look. Like we just needed, when they took the picture at the company, that we wanted some different color in there. That's not why we wanted racial diversity. It's not because at class pictures they wanted to have, different colored kids in the yearbook. That's not why racial diversity was important. It wasn't about the look. It was about the fact that if you have an entire race in your civilization that you're excluding from something, you're excluding an entire group of ideas. Now, again, those people might grow up in the same neighborhoods as the unexcluded races. So you might not get all brand new ideas. But if you're excluding literally like millions of people, then there has to be some really good ideas in there that you're not hearing, because you're only looking at them going, oh, well, because you look different, you can't be a part of this. And again, that's what I was saying earlier. Like, that's when racial diversity becomes important, if we are actually excluding an entire race based on how they look. We don't want to do that because you're excluding ideas. But once you've crossed that barrier, once we've eliminated that, where we've said, okay, everybody can take part, if you have a group that is all black or all white, all Hispanic, all Asian, whatever, if that's just the way they've organized themselves and it's working for whatever they're doing, it's idiotic to come in and say, okay, well, what y'all have going on is fine. It seems to be working for you. People are happy. The business is going well. The school is fine, whatever. But we need to change all this up because y'all look the same, so you must all think the same. And the people doing that can't look at that and go, I'm a racist because all I see in you is race. I don't see the fact that you're from a different place, that you have a different degree, that maybe you, even though you look the same, maybe you grew up with two moms and you grew up with, maybe your mom died in childbirth and you only grew up with your dad. I mean, just those things right there make two people very different, very diverse, even if they look very much the same. I don't understand how we lost that. Like how we're not seeing that anymore. So we got to get to a better place. We got to stop focusing because these groups that mainly are doing this tout themselves as like, these inclusive groups and these super non-racist, but all they see is race. It's wild. And they're the same people that if you go on a college campus and you want to talk about, hell, if I wanted to go on a college campus and I wanted to talk about this, I probably would not be allowed. So it's fine. Like, say that if you want to say that you're into diversity or whatever, just be clear. I mean, because you're not. If you can't listen to what I'm saying, or you can't listen to what somebody else is saying, or some conservative speaker or some whatever, if you can't hear it, you're not about diversity. Because about, the definition I gave, diversity is differing from one another. Nothing in the definition of diverse is about looking different from one another. It's differing from one another. So there's a lot of ways we can differ, not just in our appearance. And that's really, yeah, they have. That's really like the lamest way to do it. It's like the most basic, lowest thinking way to differentiate people. And again, that's something we knew. Like, as a culture, we were all like, judging people only on the way they looked is dumb, ignorant. And now it's the standard. To the point where we have racial quotas in businesses and colleges. Is that not saying like the way people look is the most important thing, and then your background is secondary? Like, why on college applications are they asking your race? What? I mean, if you're just wanting to track numbers for whatever reason, you just want demographic numbers, sure, maybe. But when we're actually like making quotas, what is that doing? Because if we have one big school all in the same city, let's say we have one public school in the same city where, you have, of course, in every city, there's going to be different socioeconomic classes and all that stuff. But let's say it's relatively close. It's a town where most of the people making their money are off of industry. So you get a bunch of kids from one school that you might have racial diversity. But if we're trying to pick kids out to go to a college, so let's say we have all these graduating seniors, and people are being picked based on their race, and maybe we're excluding people from other schools from a different city that have a totally different background, but because we want diversity, we're going to get the different races from this exact same school. So they've had similar experiences in a similar town, and if it's all been industry, then their parents have probably done something similar. If they have a similar experience with work, well, we haven't gotten diversity. We've just got a multicolored class picture now. So, I don't know. Something to think about.